For 7 years, Dr. Evelyn Reed believed her husband's success was her own. She was the bedrock of his life, the silent partner in his tech empire. And now she was the mother of his unborn child. She never imagined the custom diamond he designed a magnificent yellow stone he called the Sunstone, a symbol of their future family, would end up on the finger of another woman. But Evelyn wasn't just a wife. She was the secret architect of his entire company. And when she discovered his devastating betrayal, she decided against simple revenge. She opted for a corporate takeover. This isn't just a story about a broken heart. It's the story of how a brilliant woman took back everything that was stolen from her and more. Alistair Finch moved through the world as if he had personally commissioned its design. At 42, he possessed the easy confidence of a man for whom things had always fallen into place. His company Invoked Solutions was a titan in the niche world of encrypted data security, and he, as its founder and CEO, was the celebrated visionary. He lived in a sprawling penthouse overlooking Chicago's Millennium Park, drove a slate-gray Aston Martin, and was married to a woman most men would agree was far too good for him. Dr. Evelyn Reed. Evelyn, at 35, was Alistair's quiet counterpoint. Where he was broad strokes and booming charisma, she was fine detail and meticulous intellect. Her PhD in cryptography and network security wasn't just a framed piece of paper on their study wall. It was the very genesis of Innovatech. In the early days, it was her algorithms, her groundbreaking Aegis protocol, that had formed the company's unbreachable core. She had gifted him the intellectual property, signing it over to the company they built together, content to be the chief strategist behind the curtain while he played the king. Now 7 months pregnant, Evelyn felt a new kind of contentment settling over her. The slight swell of her belly was a constant, gentle reminder of the future they were building, a future beyond code and capital. "I've commissioned something," Alistair announced one Tuesday evening, sliding a sleek navy blue box from the Jeweler de Lisle of Geneva across their polished marble island. A push present, they call it. I thought the term was dreadfully common, but the sentiment is right. Evelyn's breath hitched. Inside, nestled on black velvet, lay the most extraordinary ring she had ever seen. It wasn't a traditional diamond. The center stone was a flawless, cushion-cut canary yellow diamond, at least 5 carats, flanked by 2 smaller, brilliant-cut white diamonds. It glowed with an internal fire, a captured piece of the sun. "Alistair, it's breathtaking," she whispered, her hand instinctively going to her stomach. "It's a canary yellow, one of the rarest," he said, beaming with the pride of a connoisseur. "I'm calling it the Sunstone. For you, my son. And for our son." He paused, his voice softening. "A new star in our universe. I want you to have it when he's born. A symbol of our new beginning." Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. This was the Alistair she loved, the grand romantic, the man who could make her feel like the only woman in a universe he commanded. The doubts that sometimes pricked at the edges of her mind. His increasingly late nights at the office, the faint, unfamiliar scent of perfume on his suit jacket last week. His newfound obsession with a new fitness app that seemed to demand constant messaging. All of it melted away under the warm glow of the Sunstone. The ring went into their master bedroom's safe, a promise of joy waiting to be fulfilled. The next few weeks were a blur of nursery preparations and prenatal appointments. Alistair was attentive, if a bit distracted. He blamed it on a major new contract, with a financial firm, a deal he claimed would secure their legacy for generations. Evelyn, trusting and focused on her health, accepted his explanation. She was the architect of their company. She knew the pressure he was under. The incident that unraveled everything was like most modern disasters, digital. Evelyn was on her laptop one evening, researching the safest car seats, when an email notification popped up from their shared cloud account. It was a receipt from a restaurant she didn't recognize, Le Serpent, private dining. The charge was astronomical. Curious, she opened it. It was for a dinner for two dated the previous Thursday, a night Alistair had claimed to be working late with his legal team. A cold knot formed in her stomach. It was just a dinner. It could be business. But Le Serpent was known for its intimate romantic atmosphere, not for closing corporate deals. She tried to dismiss it, but her mind, trained to find patterns and anomalies, couldn't let it go. Using a shared location app they'd installed for safety years ago, an app Alistair had likely forgotten she checked his history for that night. He hadn't been at the Innovatech building. His phone had been at a luxury condo building on the Gold Coast for 4 hours before moving to the restaurant. Her hands trembled. It was still circumstantial. She needed something concrete before she detonated her own life. Her thoughts raced cycling through possibilities until they landed on a name, Sasha Petrov. Sasha was a recent hire in the marketing department, young, fiercely ambitious, with sharp features and a predatory grace. Evelyn had met her briefly at the company's summer gala. She'd watched Sasha laugh a little too loudly at Alistair's jokes, her hand lingering on his arm, a fraction of a second too long. At the time, Evelyn had dismissed it as the behavior of a sycophantic junior employee. Now the memory felt sinister. With a growing sense of dread, Evelyn typed Sasha's name into the search bar of a popular photo-sharing app. Her profile was public. It was a curated feed of brunches, designer bags, and rooftop cocktails. Evelyn scrolled back, her heart pounding a sickening rhythm against her ribs. She went past photos from last week, last month. Then she saw it. The photo was posted 3 days ago. Sasha was holding a champagne flute, her hand angled just so. The composition was deliberate, designed to showcase the jewelry, and there on her ring finger, glowing with malevolent brilliance against the backdrop of a dimly lit opulent room, was the sunstone. Her sunstone. The ring meant for her a symbol of her unborn son, on the hand of his mistress. The caption beneath the photo was a single word: eternity. Evelyn didn't scream. She didn't cry. The feeling that washed over her was far colder, far more terrifying than simple grief. It was the absolute clarity of a system that has just detected a catastrophic breach. The firewalls of her life had been bypassed, and the core of her world had been corrupted. Alistair hadn't just cheated. He had taken the most sacred symbol of their future and given it to another woman. He had desecrated their family before it had even begun. She stared at the glowing screen, the image of the ring seared into her mind. The architect looked at the ruins of her life's design and felt for the first time not the pain of a victim, but the cold, calculating fury of a creator whose masterpiece had been defiled. And in that moment, she decided she wouldn't just tear it all down. She would rebuild it. In her name only. The shock subsided into an unnerving calm. For the next 48 hours, Evelyn became a ghost in her own home. She went through the motions discussing nursery colours with Alistair, smiling when he kissed her goodbye in the morning, her hand resting on her belly as if nothing had changed. But behind her serene facade, a different kind of architect was at work drafting the blueprints for a demolition. Alistair was a creature of habit and hubris. He believed he was smarter than everyone else, and that assumption, Evelyn knew, was his greatest vulnerability. He had built his kingdom on her intellectual foundation, but he had grown so comfortable on the throne that he had forgotten who had drawn the maps. Her first move was forensic. Late at night, while Alistair slept soundly, his snores echoing in the cavernous bedroom, Evelyn slipped into their home office. His laptop was there, password protected. But she didn't need the password. Years ago, during a security scare at Innovatech, she had insisted they install a master keylogger on all their personal devices, a program that would record every keystroke and send a log to a secure private server she controlled. He thought it was for protecting company secrets. He never imagined she would use it to uncover his. She accessed the server. It took her less than 20 minutes to find what she was looking for. There were the messages, hundreds of them exchanged through the encrypted messaging feature of the very fitness app he'd become obsessed with. They were sickeningly saccharine, filled with pet names he called Sasha his little lioness, and blatant lies about his life with Evelyn. "She doesn't understand the pressure I'm under," one of his messages read. "The pregnancy has made her so domestic. All she talks about are diapers and doctors. You're the only one who sees the real me, the man I am, outside these walls. You deserve to be celebrated, my king," Sasha had replied. "She's the cage. I'm the key." Evelyn felt a flash of white-hot rage, so intense it made her dizzy. Domestic. He was using the child they had both wanted as an excuse for his betrayal. She took a deep breath, forcing the emotion down. Emotion was a liability. Data was power. She downloaded everything: the chat logs, the location data, the restaurant receipts, even a saved screenshot Alistair had taken of Sasha, wearing a risqué's negligée. A screenshot he had foolishly saved to their shared cloud drive before quickly deleting it, not realizing the cloud's trash bin retained files for 30 days. But the text messages were just the appetizer. The main course was the ring. He hadn't just given it to Sasha. He had documented the entire sordid affair. He had taken a video, a short, shaky clip on his phone, of the moment he presented it to her in that private dining room at Le Serpent. Evelyn watched the video, her face a stone mask. Sasha's gasp of delight, her cloying, "Oh, Alistair, for me," and Alistair's smug, idiotic grin as he slid the sunstone onto her finger. "It's a symbol," he said in the video, his voice thick with false sincerity. "Of our future. A real future." The hypocrisy was breathtaking. He had used the exact same sentiment, the same concept of a symbolic future that he had used with his pregnant wife just days earlier. He wasn't just a cheat. He was lazy, a plagiarist of his own emotions. That was the turning point. This was no longer just about infidelity. It was about fraud. Not just moral fraud, but potentially something more tangible. She pulled up the records for the ring. Alistair had purchased the Sunstone, not with his personal credit card, but through a discretionary fund in the company's finances, masking it as a client acquisition and retention expense. He had used Innovatech funds, their funds, to buy a multi-million-dollar gift for his mistress. Evelyn leaned back in the leather office chair, a slow, cold smile touching her lips for the first time in days. He had just handed her a weapon of mass destruction. Her next step required a different kind of expertise. She needed a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, but a shark. A name came to mind, a man she'd been introduced to at a charity event years ago, Benjamin Carter. Carter was a legend in corporate litigation, a man known for his scorched earth tactics and his astronomical success rate. His firm, Carter & Locke, specialized in hostile takeovers and partnership dissolutions. She met him not in his gleaming downtown office, but in a quiet, anonymous coffee shop in a neighborhood Alistair would never frequent. Benjamin Carter was a small, neat man in his late 50s, with eyes that seemed to miss nothing. He listened without interruption as Evelyn laid out the situation, her voice low and even. She didn't cry or rage. She presented the facts as if she were delivering a technical briefing, complete with a timeline and digital evidence preloaded onto a secure tablet. When she finished, Carter took a slow sip of his black coffee. "Dr. Reed." He began, his voice raspy. "Most people in your position come to me seeking leverage for a divorce settlement. They want the house, the alimony, the satisfaction of public humiliation. You haven't mentioned divorce once." "A divorce is a foregone conclusion," Evelyn said, her gaze steady. "But settling for half of what he thinks is his isn't justice. Alistair Finch didn't build Innovatech. I did. He was the salesman. I was the architect. He seems to have forgotten that. I want you to help me remind him." Carter's eyes lit up with a predatory gleam. "Remind him how exactly I don't want to cripple the company. I want to command it. I want him out, not just out of my life, but out of my company. Completely and irrevocably." Carter leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "You mentioned the core intellectual property, the Aegis Protocol. You said you gifted it to the company. Talk me through the paperwork. What exactly did you sign?" This was the heart of it. Evelyn had anticipated the question. "That's the beautiful part, Mr. Carter. When we incorporated our first lawyer, a junior associate Alistair hired to save money, drafted a set of bylaws that were frankly amateurish. The IP transfer agreement assigns ownership of the Aegis Protocol to Innovatech Solutions, LLC. However, she paused, letting the weight of her next words settle. I insisted on a specific clause, a clause Alistair skimmed over because he was too busy designing the logo. It states that in the event of gross malfeasance or misappropriation of company assets by a managing partner, the full intellectual rights and the controlling interest associated with them revert to the original creator of said IP. Me. Benjamin Carter's thin lips spread into a wide, wolfish grin. Gross malfeasance, he repeated, savoring the words. Like, for example, embezzling millions of dollars in company funds to purchase a canary diamond for one's mistress. Precisely, Evelyn confirmed. Dr. Reed, Carter said, extending a hand across the table. I do believe we are going to get along splendidly. First things first, we need that ring. Getting the ring back was not a matter of negotiation. It was a tactical operation. Evelyn knew that confronting Sasha with anger or tears would be useless. Sasha Petrov operated on a currency of power and leverage, so Evelyn would speak her language. Benjamin Carter's team of private investigators worked quickly. Within a day, they had a complete file on Sasha, her lease agreement on the Gold Coast condo co-signed by a shell corporation linked to Alistair. Her credit card statements riddled with extravagant purchases paid for by a secondary card Alistair provided, and her career history a string of short-lived positions at companies run by wealthy older men. Sasha wasn't a lovelorn girl. She was a career predator. Evelyn chose the location for their meeting carefully, the lobby of the Peninsula Chicago. It was neutral ground, public enough to prevent a scene, yet suffused with an aura of wealth and power that would make Sasha feel simultaneously at home and intimidated. She sent a single cryptic text to Sasha from a burner phone, the Sunstone. The Peninsula lobby, 4 p.m. Come alone. You don't want me to talk to Alistair about this first. Sasha arrived exactly on time, a vision of calculated confidence in a sharp blazer and leather pants. She strode toward the table where Evelyn sat, a smirk playing on her lips. The sunstone was conspicuously absent from her hand. A smart, preemptive move. Evelyn's Sasha began, her tone dripping with false sympathy. I had a feeling we'd be having this conversation eventually. I want you to know this was never my intention. Evelyn held up a hand, cutting her off. Spare me the performance, Sasha. We both know what this is. I'm not here to discuss my marriage. I'm here for my property. Sasha's smirk tightened. I'm not sure what you're talking about. Alistair gave me a gift, a very generous one. What he told you about it is between the two of you. Evelyn slid a thick manila envelope across the table. This isn't about what he told me. It's about what he did. Open it. Sasha hesitated, then slid out the contents. On top was a high-resolution glossy print of the receipt for the sunstone from Delisle, clearly showing it was purchased by Innovatech Solutions. Beneath it was a copy of the company's expense report, with the purchase coded as a client expense, and beneath that a copy of Sasha's own employment contract, which contained a standard clause about accepting gifts procured through illicit company funds, being grounds for immediate termination and potential legal action. Sasha's face paled. This is between Alistair and the company. It has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with you. Evelyn said, her voice dropping to a glacial calm. Right now, you're a co-conspirator in felony embezzlement. That's a crime that carries a hefty prison sentence. Forget about keeping your job. You'd be lucky to keep your freedom. A criminal record doesn't look good on a resume. She let that sink in before delivering the next blow. She slid a second, thinner envelope across the table. Inside was a single sheet of paper. It was a pre-written non-disclosure agreement and a wire transfer confirmation for $50,000 payable to Sasha Petrov upon the return of the ring and the signing of the NDA. Here is your choice, Evelyn stated, leaning forward slightly. Option A. You walk out of here, go to your condo, retrieve the ring, and bring it back to me within the hour. You sign this document which forbids you from ever contacting me, Alistair, or anyone at Innovatech again. In return, the $50,000 is wired to your account, and my lawyer conveniently loses all evidence of your involvement in Alistair's fraud. You get a clean break and a small severance for your troubles. Sasha stared at her, speechless. Option B. Evelyn continued, her eyes like chips of ice. Is that you refuse? In which case my lawyer, Benjamin Carter, you may have heard of him, will file a report with the DA's office tomorrow morning. He'll also file a civil suit against you for receipt of stolen property. The ensuing scandal will not only destroy your career, but will make your name and face synonymous with corporate theft. Your photo, the one from your social media with you wearing the ring, will be Exhibit A. Alistair won't protect you. Men like him always sacrifice their pawns. You'll be left with nothing but legal bills and public disgrace. She sat back, placing her hands on her pregnant belly. The choice is yours, Sasha. A quiet exit with $50,000 or a starring role in a very public, very ugly criminal investigation. You have 5 seconds to decide. The bravado drained from Sasha's face, replaced by raw panic. She looked at Evelyn, at the woman she had dismissed as a domestic, and saw not a victim, but an executioner. The $50,000 was an insult, a pittance compared to the lifestyle she'd envisioned, but it was infinitely better than ruin. Option A. Sasha croaked, her voice barely a whisper. I'll get the ring. An hour later, in the same lobby, a trembling Sasha handed over the heavy, glowing diamond. Evelyn took it without a word, her fingers closing around the cold metal. She watched as Sasha signed the NDA, her signature a spidery scrawl. Then Evelyn stood up and walked away, not looking back. She had the ring. She had the leverage. Now it was time to deal with the king. Alistair remained blissfully ignorant. He saw Evelyn's quietude as pregnancy-related moodiness. He bought her flowers, massaged her feet, and told her how much he loved her, his lies as smooth and polished as the marble floors of their penthouse. Each lie was another nail in his own coffin. Evelyn played her part to perfection. She allowed him to believe he was in control, that his world was secure. She even feigned excitement when he announced he was calling a special board meeting. "It's about the Vanguard deal," he explained, puffing out his chest. "I'm going to announce the final projections. It's going to double our valuation. This is the culmination of everything, Ev, everything we've worked for." "That sounds wonderful, darling," Evelyn said, smiling sweetly. "I'm so proud of you. In fact, I think I'll attend the meeting. It's been a while since I sat in. I want to see you shine." Alistair beamed. "Of course, the board will love to see you." The supportive wife, the mother of the future Finch heir. It's perfect optics. Perfect optics, Evelyn thought to herself as she helped him choose a tie that morning. He had no idea that the stage he was so carefully setting for his triumph would in fact be his scaffold. The Innovatech boardroom was on the 54th floor, a glass-walled sanctuary that offered a godlike view of the city below. It was Alistair's favorite room, a physical manifestation of his success. The long obsidian table reflected the faces of the 6 board members, seasoned investors and industry veterans Alistair had courted and won over with his charisma and Evelyn's technology. Alistair stood at the head of the table, radiating confidence. He was in his element, a master of ceremonies, about to deliver his masterpiece. Evelyn sat quietly to the side, a serene and supportive presence, her hands folded over her baby bump. He winked at her, a gesture of shared victory. She offered a small, enigmatic smile in return. "Good morning, everyone," Alistair began, his voice booming with energy. "Thank you for joining on such short notice. As you know, we are on the precipice of the largest expansion in this company's history. The Vanguard deal is—" "Excuse me, Alistair." The voice was not loud, but it cut through Alistair's monologue with surgical precision. It was Evelyn. All heads turned towards her. Alistair looked momentarily irritated, as if a prop had spoken out of turn. "Evelyn, darling, I'm in the middle of the presentation. Perhaps we can talk," after he said, with a strained, patronizing smile. "I'm afraid it can't wait," she said, her voice remaining perfectly level. "There is another matter of business that must take precedence, a matter of corporate governance and fiduciary duty." A nervous murmur rippled through the room. The board members exchanged uneasy glances. This was not on the agenda. "What are you talking about?" Alistair hissed, his smile vanishing. Just then the boardroom doors opened. Benjamin Carter entered, followed by 2 of his associates, who were laden with document binders. Carter's presence in the room had the effect of a shark fin slicing through calm water. Everyone present knew exactly who he was. "Mr. Finch Carter," said his voice, crisp and devoid of pleasantry. "My name is Benjamin Carter. I am here representing the interests of my client, Dr. Evelyn Reed." He gestured to his associates, who began placing a thick, spiral-bound binder in front of each board member, including a stunned Alistair. "This is absurd," Alistair stammered, his face turning a blotchy red. "Evelyn, what is this? What have you done?" "I've simply protected my assets," Evelyn replied, finally standing up. She addressed the board. her voice now filled with an authority they had never heard from her before. "Gentlemen, for the past 7 years, you have known me as Alistair's wife. What most of you don't know is that the core technology upon which this entire company is built, the Aegis Protocol, is my creation. The original patents, the foundational algorithms, were born from my doctoral dissertation." She paused, letting that sink in. "When we founded Innovatech, I signed the IP over to the company. However, being a student of security, I insisted on a fail-safe, a clause in the corporate bylaws which you will find on page 1 of your binders, Article 12, Section 4B. Alistair frantically flipped through his binder, his hands shaking. The other board members were already reading their expressions, shifting from confusion to shock. The clause, Evelyn continued, her voice ringing with clarity, states that in the event a managing partner, namely Alistair Finch, is found to have committed gross malfeasance or misappropriation of company assets, the controlling interest tied to the Aegis Protocol IP, a 60% stake, reverts entirely to me, the original creator. Effective immediately. This is slander. It's a lie, Alistair roared, slamming his binder shut. There has been no malfeasance. Has there not? Carter interjected smoothly. If you would all be so kind as to turn to Exhibit A. He clicked a button on a remote, and the large presentation screen at the front of the room, where Alistair's triumphant sales figures were meant to be displayed, flickered to life. It showed a crystal-clear image of the D. Lyle jeweler's receipt for the Sunstone. Price $2.8 million. Buyer Innovatech Solutions. On June 12th, Carter narrated Mr. Finch used company funds from a discretionary account to purchase this canary diamond ring, fraudulently classifying it as a client acquisition expense. The screen changed. It was now a picture of Sasha Petrov smiling on her social media feed, the sunstone blazing on her finger. He then gifted this multi-million-dollar company asset to his mistress, Miss Sasha Petrov, a junior marketing employee. The screen changed again this time to the shaky video Alistair had taken in the private dining room. The board watched in horrified silence as their CEO presented the ring to his mistress, hearing him call it a symbol of our future. Alistair looked as if he had been physically struck. He stared at the screen, then at Evelyn, his face a mask of disbelief and betrayal. "You," he choked out. "The misappropriation of nearly $3 million constitutes gross malfeasance under any legal definition," Evelyn stated calmly. "Therefore, as of this moment, per the bylaws you all ratified, I am the majority shareholder of Innovatech Solutions." She looked at the stunned faces of the board members. "My first act as controlling shareholder is to call a vote of no confidence in our current CEO, Alistair Finch, on the grounds of felony embezzlement and breach of fiduciary duty. All in favor." One by one, like dominoes falling, the hands of the board members went up. They were businessmen. They had seen the evidence. Their loyalty was not to a man, but to the company, and their investment, both of which Alistair had jeopardized. The motion carries, Evelyn declared into the dead silence. "Alistair, you are terminated, effective immediately. Security will escort you from the premises. Please clear out your personal effects. You have 15 minutes. Alistair sank into his chair, a broken man. The power, the charisma, the confidence, it all evaporated, leaving behind a hollow, defeated shell. He stared at Evelyn, not with anger, but with a kind of pathetic bewilderment. He had so thoroughly underestimated her that he couldn't even comprehend the totality of his defeat. As 2 security guards entered the room, Evelyn walked to the head of the table, his spot. She placed her hands on the polished obsidian surface. "And one last thing, Alistair," she said, her voice soft but final. She reached into her handbag and pulled out the sunstone. It caught the light, casting a brilliant yellow fire across the table. "I believe this belongs to the company." She didn't look at him again as he was led away, a dethroned king being exiled from his own castle. The coup was complete. The aftermath of the boardroom coup was swift and decisive. News of Alistair Finch's spectacular fall from grace was contained by the ironclad NDA's Benjamin Carter had the board members sign. The official story released to the press and employees was that Mr. Finch was stepping down for personal health reasons, and that Dr. Evelyn Reed, the company's co-founder and technological visionary, would be stepping in as interim CEO. It was a smooth, clean narrative that protected the company's stock price and reassured clients. Alistair didn't go quietly. He tried to fight hiring a team of aggressive lawyers who threatened countersuits. But their blustering was no match for Carter's meticulous preparation. Every threat was met with a calm presentation of the irrefutable evidence, the embezzlement, the fraud, the breach of contract. Alistair was advised that if he pursued the matter, Evelyn would be forced to press criminal charges. Faced with the choice between public humiliation and a quiet, impoverished exit, he finally relented. He signed the divorce papers and the final separation agreement, walking away with a fraction of his former wealth and none of his power. His kingdom had crumbled to dust. Evelyn, meanwhile, stepped into the light. For years she had been the ghost in the machine. Now she was at the controls. Her first week as CEO was a whirlwind of activity. She met with every department head, not with the blustering bravado of Alistair, but with quiet, probing intelligence. She already knew the company's weaknesses: the bloated marketing budget, the vanity projects Alistair had championed, the lax security protocols in non-essential departments. She trimmed the fat with surgical precision. The lease on Alistair's ostentatious secondary office in London was terminated. The company's fleet of luxury cars was sold. Sasha Petrov's entire influencer marketing division, a thinly veiled slush fund for Alistair's whims, was dissolved. The employees initially wary of the change quickly saw the results. The company felt leaner, more focused, more innovative. They saw that Dr. Reed wasn't just the former wife of the CEO. She was a brilliant leader in her own right. Her pregnancy was not a hindrance. It became a symbol of her strength. She walked the halls of Innovatech, her belly a proud proclamation of a new beginning, not just for her, but for the company she had rightfully claimed. She commanded respect not by raising her voice, but by lowering it, forcing people to listen closely to her insightful data-driven directives. The Vanguard deal, which Alistair had nearly fumbled with his arrogance, was personally saved by Evelyn. She flew to New York and met with their CEO not to boast, but to demonstrate the superior, unbreachable security of the Aegis Protocol, her protocol. The deal was signed larger and more lucrative than Alistair had even hoped. 2 months after the takeover, Evelyn gave birth to a healthy baby boy. She named him Andrew. She took only 2 weeks of maternity leave, often bringing the baby with her to the office, where a nursery was set up next to her executive suite. Her team saw a woman who was not choosing between family and career, but seamlessly integrating them, building a new kind of empire. One afternoon, about 6 months after the birth, she received a call from an unknown number. It was Alistair. His voice was thin, unrecognizable. He sounded like an old man. Evelyn, I was just calling to see how you are, how the baby is." Evelyn stood by her office window, looking down at Millennium Park. She could see families walking, children playing. She felt a brief, fleeting pang of what might have been, but it was quickly replaced by the cool certainty of what was. "We are fine, Alistair," she said, her voice polite but distant. "I'm sorry." He whispered the words, sounding hollow and rehearsed. "For everything. I was a fool. I lost everything." "No, you didn't lose everything," Evelyn corrected him, her voice holding no malice, only fact. "You can't lose what you never truly built. You were just a temporary custodian." "Goodbye, Alistair." She ended the call before he could reply, blocking the number. She had no space for his ghosts in her new world. Later that day, she drove to a bank and opened a new safe deposit box. Inside, she placed the navy blue box from Delisle. She opened it one last time and looked at the sunstone. It was still magnificent, a captured star. But its meaning had changed. It was no longer a symbol of a man's love or his betrayal. It was a reminder that sometimes the most beautiful things must be taken from the dark and put in a safe place, not to be worn, but to serve as a monument to one's own strength, a testament to the day the architect took back her crown. She closed the box, locked it away, and walked back out into the sunshine, ready to build the future. 2 years passed. The quiet hum of progress replaced the roar of conflict. Innovatech Solutions, under the steady and visionary hand of CEO Evelyn Reed, had not just recovered, it had soared. The Aegis Protocol became the undisputed gold standard in data security, adopted by governments and Fortune 100 companies alike. Evelyn, no longer the interim CEO, had been unanimously and permanently confirmed by the board. She was no longer a myth or a secret, but a celebrated figure in the tech world, a rare leader who combined profound technical genius with sharp business acumen. She was featured on the cover of Forbes, not as part of a power couple, but alone under the headline, "The Architect: How Evelyn Reed Rebuilt an Empire." Her life found a new stable rhythm. Mornings were for Andrew, her bright, energetic toddler, whose laughter filled the once sterile penthouse with a warmth she had never known. Days were for Innovatech, for steering the company she had birthed, in every sense of the word. Evenings were for quiet contemplation, for reading, for being simply Mommy. And then, after Andrew was asleep, Evelyn. The chaos felt like a lifetime ago. Alistair was a fading echo, a cautionary tale she sometimes recalled with a clinical detachment. Sasha Petrov was a non-entity, a ghost exorcised by a signed NDA and a wire transfer. The sunstone remained in its velvet box within the cold steel of the bank vault, a dormant volcano. Evelyn had built a citadel of peace and prosperity, and she believed its walls were unbreachable. She had underestimated the envy of other kings. Richard Sterling, the CEO of the sprawling tech conglomerate Omnicorp, had been watching Innovatech's ascent with a predatory hunger. Omnicorp was a shark that survived by swallowing smaller, faster fish. They had tried for years to develop a security protocol to rival Aegis and had failed spectacularly, burning through nearly $1 billion in R&D. It was cheaper, Sterling reasoned, to simply buy the source. The first move was conventional. A formal acquisition offer landed on Evelyn's desk, delivered by a phalanx of smiling investment bankers. The offer was substantial enough to make Evelyn and her board members fabulously wealthy for the rest of their lives. But it was also an insult. It valued Innovatech as a mere asset, a collection of code to be absorbed and rebranded, its soul stripped for parts. In a special board meeting with Benjamin Carter, sitting at her right hand as the board's chairman, the decision was swift and unanimous. Evelyn herself drafted the response. It was polite, professional, and as unyielding as diamond. "Thank you for your generous offer," it concluded. "However, Innovatech is more than a company to us. It is a commitment to a standard of excellence and independence. We are respectfully not for sale." In his own stark, minimalist boardroom in Silicon Valley, Richard Sterling read Evelyn's reply on a tablet. He didn't scowl or rage. He simply set the tablet down and looked at his head of corporate strategy. "She has principles," Sterling said, as if identifying a fatal flaw in an opponent's design. "That means she has pressure points. If we can't buy the castle, we'll poison the Queen's well. Find me a way to devalue the asset. Find me a way to devalue her." He paused, his pale blue eyes cold. "Dig into the company's history. Find the ghosts. Every company has them." It didn't take Sterling's team of corporate excavators long to find the fault lines. They unearthed the story of a messy divorce, a disgraced former CEO, and a very public changing of the guard, all of it buried under years of good press and tightly sealed legal documents. They found the two perfect ghosts, both restless, both hungry for a second act. Alistair Finch's life had become a study in mediocrity. The man who once commanded boardrooms now managed a regional sales team for a mid-level software company in a dreary suburb of Cleveland. He lived in a 2-bedroom apartment that smelled of stale takeout and regret. His Aston Martin was long gone, replaced by a reliable but soul-crushing sedan. The swagger had curdled into a permanent bitterness, a poison he drank every morning as he told himself, and anyone who would listen, that his brilliant wife had stolen everything from him. He was nursing his grievances when a sleek black car pulled up to his office building one evening. A woman in an impeccably tailored suit introduced herself as a representative from a private equity firm interested in his story. Over a steak dinner at a restaurant, far nicer than Alistair could now afford, the offer was laid out. It wasn't about equity. It was about revenge. They wanted his knowledge of Innovatech's early days, his perspective on Evelyn's character, his willingness to become the public face of a story of betrayal. In return, he would receive a $5 million consulting fee and a guaranteed vice president position at Omnicorp upon the successful acquisition of Innovatech. Alistair's heart hammered in his chest. It was more than money. It was vindication. It was a chance to reclaim his narrative, to be the hero of his own story once more. The venom that had been poisoning him for 2 years now had a purpose. "Tell me what you need," he said, his eyes gleaming with a familiar predatory light that had long been extinguished. The second ghost was harder to find, but Richard Sterling's resources were nearly limitless. Sasha Petrov was living in Miami, working as a public relations manager for a hotel chain. She had used Evelyn's $50,000 as a down payment on a new life, but it was a life far from the glamour she craved. It was a life of budgets and compromises. The NDA she had signed felt like a leash, a constant reminder of her humiliating defeat. Omnicorp's approach to her was more direct. They didn't offer a job, they offered a number. $10 million, wired to an offshore account. All she had to do was break her NDA and tell her story to a hand-picked media outlet. Their legal team, the best in the country, would handle the inevitable lawsuit from Innovatech. They would protect her. Sasha wrestled with the decision for less than a day. $10 million wasn't just a new life. It was a new identity. It was the power to never be at anyone's mercy again. She justified it easily. Evelyn had been cold calculating. She had treated Sasha like a bug to be swatted. This wasn't just about money. It was about evening the score. "I'll do it," she told the lawyer on the other end of the encrypted call. "And I have a lot to say." The attack began on a Tuesday morning. It wasn't a salvo. It was a nuclear strike. A highly influential, notoriously aggressive tech blog called Byteblade, a publication secretly financed by an Omnicorp subsidiary, published its lead story. The headline was designed for maximum damage, a viral incendiary device launched into the heart of the tech world. The Ice Queen of Innovatech did Dr. Evelyn Reed conspire to steal her husband's empire. A bombshell exclusive. The article was a masterpiece of character assassination. It featured a lengthy sympathetic interview with Sasha Petrov, who was presented as a whistleblower. She spun a harrowing tale of a brilliant but emotionally fragile CEO, Alistair Finch, who had found a moment of solace with her during a difficult time. She painted Evelyn not as a betrayed wife, but as a cold, manipulative opportunist who discovered their affair, and instead of seeking a divorce, plotted a Machiavellian corporate coup. She never loved him. She loved the company, Sasha claimed in a tearful and expertly coached quote. When she saw a chance to have it all for herself, she took it. She used a legal technicality to destroy him right when he was at his most vulnerable. Alistair's quotes corroborated everything, framing him as the tragic innovator. "I built Innovatech from the ground up," he stated. "My only crime was being human. She used that against me to seize control of my life's work. She took my company, my home, and she's raising my son. What she did wasn't business. It was theft." The story was meticulously crafted to omit the most crucial facts. There was no mention of embezzlement, no mention that Evelyn was the creator of the core technology. The purchase of the Sunstone ring was spun as Alistair planning a surprise gift to recommit to his wife, a plan that a jealous Evelyn supposedly discovered and twisted to her advantage. It was a complete inversion of reality, a fiction so bold and audacious that it felt to the uninformed public more compelling than the truth. The story exploded online. The hashtag Justice for Alistair began trending, fueled by an army of bots and outraged readers who loved a story of a powerful woman's takedown. The comment sections of financial news sites and tech forums were a cesspool of misogyny and speculation. Evelyn's carefully curated image of a brilliant stoic leader was being systematically dismantled and replaced with the caricature of a vindictive corporate black widow. Evelyn sat in her office, the one that felt like the command center of her stable universe, and read the article on her tablet. Benjamin Carter was on the speakerphone, his voice a low, furious growl. "It's a coordinated attack, Evelyn. Sterling's fingerprints are all over this. They're trying to destabilize the board, spook the investors. They want to force our hand." Evelyn wasn't listening to the strategic analysis. She was reading the words again and again, feeling an old familiar coldness seep into her bones. The peace she had fought so hard to build was a fragile illusion. The ghosts she thought she had buried were now clawing their way out of their graves, animated by an enemy with resources far greater than Alistair's wounded pride. She ended the call with Carter promising to convene the board. She swiveled in her chair to face the wall of glass overlooking the city. Her city. Her company. Below, life went on unaware of the war that had just been declared in the heavens of corporate power. On her desk sat a silver-framed photo of Andrew, his smile wet and innocent. This attack wasn't just on CEO Evelyn Reed, it was on Andrew's mother. It was an attempt to poison not just her well, but the entire legacy she was building for him. She thought she had won the war 2 years ago. How naive. That was just a border skirmish. This was an invasion. A cold, hard resolve settled over her, displacing the shock. The architect looked at the new, far more dangerous threat to her citadel, not with fear, but with a renewed, chilling clarity. They thought they could break her with lies. They thought her strength was a secret to be exposed. They were wrong. Her strength was a weapon she had not yet been forced to fully deploy. "All right, Richard," she whispered to the empty room, her reflection a determined silhouette against the sky. "You want a war. You've got at one." Evelyn Reed's story is a powerful reminder that the greatest betrayals can often ignite our greatest strengths. She didn't just get even. She got everything. She transformed her pain into power, using her intellect and foresight, not just to reclaim what was hers, but to build it into something better, something stronger. Her story isn't about revenge. It's about righteous reclamation. It proves that the quietest person in the room is often the most powerful. If this incredible story of resilient strategy and ultimate victory resonated with you, please show your support by hitting that like button. It truly helps our channel grow. Share this video with anyone in your life who needs a reminder of their own hidden power and worth. And most importantly, if you want more stories like this, deep dives into justice, karma, and incredible comebacks, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell. What did you think of Evelyn's boardroom takeover? Was it the perfect move? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. Thank you for watching.